Hi, good afternoon. I'm Lisa. I work at Blockstream on Sea Lightning. And today I'm here to talk to you all about Lightning and Liquidity, a financier's guide to staking Bitcoin. Now, before I get too far into my talk, I kind of want to give a short this is not a talk. We're not going to be talking today about ways to earn fees with routing on Lightning and exactly how to position your node to get the best return. That's not what this talk is. Instead, what I'd like to give you is kind of a framework for thinking about liquidity and how that intersects with the Lightning Network. Yeah, okay, great. So before we talk too much about how liquidity works on Lightning, we really need to talk about Lightning's relationship to Bitcoin. But before we can talk about Lightning's relationship to Bitcoin, I really think that we also need to kind of put Bitcoin in the context of the larger kind of token and staking conversation in general. So before you start thinking, whoa, Lisa, what are you talking about? Tokens at a Bitcoin conference? First, I'd like to say, kind of apologize, it's not what you think, but I'm gonna do it anyways. So let's start with kind of just the basics. What is a token? And I've made up my own definition for this. I say that a token is anything that you can exchange for other things. All right, that's pretty simple. So let's do an example. So for example, let's say I have a scarf. I'm going to call this a scarf token. And let's say that I want to exchange that scarf token for some USD tokens. So, USD tokens. So I need to find an exchange to do a place I can do this token swap. So I go to the Etsy DEX, and I find a willing partner in my token scarf to token USD exchange, and I execute a token scarf USD token swap. Okay, great. So we've just done a token exchange. Now I've got some USD. So most people in the US, when they've got some USD tokens, they go and they put it in a bank. And the reason that they do that is that the bank, so they have USD tokens, put them in the bank, is that over time, the bank gives you more USD tokens just because they have your tokens. Cool. And so I kind of want to reframe this common thing that a lot of people do with USD tokens, and say that what you're actually doing when you take your USD tokens and you put them in the bank is you're actually making staked USD bank tokens. So they're still denominated in US dollars, but you've actually staked those USD tokens into your bank. And as a reward, over time, they give you more USD tokens. But this isn't a this is kind of you are kind of into a contract when you do this. In the United States, at savings banks, when you have a savings account, there's usually some terms. You can only do a certain number of withdrawals or swap outs per month. And you can't use the tokens for anything else while they're in the savings account. Makes sense. In return for doing these terms, you get some rewards. So you get an interest rate, as they call it. So this is the rate at which they pay you back your reward tokens. And then sometimes if you bank at the right bank, some of them will be FDIC insured, which means that if the bank goes bankrupt, then you'll definitely get your money back up to a certain dollar amount. Okay, cool. So that's one type of way that you can stake tokens. There's other ways you can stake tokens. There's other cryptocurrency projects that are called staking projects. And so one quick example of that is this project called Algorand. So you take your USD tokens and you stake them into Algorand. You do a swap, you get Algorand, you keep Algorand in a wallet. The way that Algorand pays out their token rewards is on over time. So much like a bank account, they give you more Algorand in your Algorand wallet as time goes on. Great. Okay. So we've talked about a couple different ways that you can stake tokens into different things. One thing that I find really helpful in thinking about staking rewards is there's two different, sorry, I have got way ahead, it's cool. Okay, so let's back up a sec. So we've talked about how you can stake different things. Let's bring this back to Bitcoin now. How do we stake Bitcoin? If it's no, you can't stake Bitcoin, it's not possible, it's proof of work, there's no staking in Bitcoin. But how do you stake Bitcoin? So maybe it's better if I reframe this question so it's a little easier to understand what I'm asking. How do you make the Bitcoin that you have make you more Bitcoin in the future? Okay, so the obvious answer to that, how do you get more Bitcoin? Well, you mine Bitcoin, that's where Bitcoin comes from. Duh, Lisa. Okay, so let's kind of walk through how this would work. So I have some Bitcoin. So I use my Bitcoin as collateral and I take out a loan. And then with that loan, I buy some mining equipment. And now I'm mining Bitcoin. So now I have taken some Bitcoin that I have and I've staked it such that I'm making more Bitcoin with it in the future using that Bitcoin. So I have staked my Bitcoin via mining. Cool. So with Bitcoin, it's kind of possible to stake it via mining if you do that thing. Okay, great. So now let's talk about these different ways you can classify kinds of staking, because I think this is really interesting. All right, so I've kind of come up with this term of, so there's two ways you can classify these like rewards that you get back from staking. The first class I'm calling currency inflation rewards. So this is a reward that you get because the total amount of that currency or token, that token supply is increasing, and they have to hand out that token supply to someone. So you can kind of put yourself in the right place at the right time and end up being the one who gets that increased amount of that token as they increase the supply. The other kind of token reward that you can get is something that I'm calling a utility reward. And this is where you kind of provide some utility using your token, and because it provides a service, you get paid back more usually of that token. So we can take the examples we've talked through really quickly and sort of map them out. Obviously, Bitcoin mining fits in the currency inflation reward category because the mining reward is a result of the total supply of Bitcoin increasing. You can also take, mining also gives you another kind of reward, the utility reward, in the form of transaction fees. So mining Bitcoin, actually, you get money from the currency inflation reward and a utility reward in the form of transaction fees. So like Algorand, kind of guess where that ends up in the currency inflation rewards. They're just making more Algorand to hand out. And then the bank, kind of like the banking example that we went through earlier, I put in the utility rewards because in theory they're using your money to loan out to people and then they make money back and give you a portion of it. Cool, but let's go back to Bitcoin really fast. There's other ways, so what are other ways that we can stake and earn rewards from Bitcoin? One way that you could do it is you could go to a Bitcoin savings and loan company and put your Bitcoin in a cryptocurrency savings account, and over time that will pay you back more Bitcoin. Right, so this is how things. So I think you all can kind of see what another option of where to stake your Bitcoin would be. But before we get into that exactly, I kind of just want to pause for a moment and say, now we're thinking like financiers. So we're asking this question, how do you make more Bitcoin with the Bitcoin that you have now, more Bitcoin in the future using the Bitcoin you have now? This is really a question that financiers like ask themselves, right? Like, how do I have like now and make it such that I get more of this in the future? Cool, okay, so as you can guess, the other way that you could stake Bitcoin that you own is by putting it into Lightning. Great, so put this on our chart. I think you can kind of also guess where I would put it on this chart. It definitely belongs in the utility rewards category. Cool. Okay, so how exactly does this work? So I say, oh, you can stake Bitcoin in Lightning, but how does that like pay back exactly? Right now, the way that you get more Bitcoin with your Bitcoin is through routing fees. So pretty quickly, just kind of walk through how that works. General idea is that node A opens a channel with B by putting their Bitcoin into the channel, and then someone decides to route a payment from A to B, and so as the money flows through, both A and B get a routing fee, which is great. There's a couple of, I kind of think like, so I think this is great, but I think that there's a couple kind of problems with routing fees, like in general. One is if you heard Rusty talk earlier, you'll know that he talked about how fees are just incredibly low right now. So it's not really a good guaranteed way to get money back. The other problem with it is that traffic is kind of low, / we don't really have a good way to tell where traffic is going. So that makes it really hard to know where to put channels, which leads to my third point, which it's really hard to gauge how effective your capital is going to be, like your Bitcoin like the Bitcoin you put into a channel, without committing to it and creating the channel. Okay, so these are some problems. And given all these problems, if you're someone who's holding Bitcoin, what kind of incentive do you have to put your Bitcoin capital into a Lightning channel when there's these other options with what you could do with your Bitcoin stake, such as putting it into like a Bitcoin savings and loan account? Great, okay, so we want to make it such that it's easier and better to kind of figure out where capital or more Bitcoin should go in the Lightning Network, which basically means Lightning needs like better price discovery. So one way that I'm proposing to make this better is by the introduction of this idea of like a liquidity marketplace. And basically how this would work is a node, like node B, would be able to advertise for itself in its node announcement. And this is a message in Lightning protocol that like every node sends out. Advertise kind of a price. It's like, hey, I will provide liquidity into your channel, and here's like my rates. They kind of have like a rate card. And so then node A can come along and say, hey, I would really like to get some inbound liquidity. I'm going to ask B to take up B on their offer for liquidity. So I'm going to send them an open channel request saying, hey, you know, I'm going to pay you what you're asking, which is like 5 sats for every 1,000 sats you put into my channel. And then node B will say, okay, great, that like, you know, the amount you're asking for is something I can do, or like, you seem like a good node to like, for me to put liquidity to. So B decides that's an offer it wants to take, so it dual funds the channel with A and also puts money into it. So now you have this channel that's got liquidity in both directions. And then after a certain amount of time, B would be rewarded for having put their liquidity into the channel with A. Cool. Okay, but so imagine it's not just B that's doing this, but it's pretty much any node on the network that had liquidity that they would like to advertise that's available. So really, this creates like a marketplace. I'll go back. Makes a marketplace where different nodes are advertising different rates that they value their available capital at, if that makes sense. And this is all like easily discoverable because in order to advertise your rate, you have to put out your node announcement, and node announcements are a gossip message, which means they get sent to every other node in the network, which is cool. Cool, so there's a couple goals that I hope that this will achieve. The first thing is I hope it provides a more visible valuation to liquidity across the network. So you could kind of just like look at all the node announcements and see what every node individually values their capital at, which is cool. I also hope that this will make liquidity a lot easier to access. So if you're a node and you would like to get inbound liquidity, all you have to do is find a node that's advertising it and request them to contribute to a channel that you're opening. And then thirdly, hopefully, this will give the network as a whole some mechanics that allows it to allocate the liquidity to where it's most needed and profitable. And as a side effect, that means that payments are more able to easily get where they're going because there's enough liquidity in the places where payments want to go, if that makes sense. Cool. So hopefully this will make the Lightning liquidity kind of network a little more like self-managing in terms of allocating capital where it's most needed, such that payments then become like really easy to do because there's plenty of liquidity in that direction. Great, okay, so this is all sounds great, Lisa. How do we make this happen? There's 2 things that we really need to kind of finish. The first one is the project I've been working on, which is adding dual-funded channels to the protocol. We've got a implementation on C Lightning, which I'm going to call 80% done. We made a few changes recently that we need to go back and add. And then the other thing that we need in order for those of you who are unfamiliar with the spec process, in order for a proposal to the spec to be considered for inclusion into the permanent spec, it has to have at least 2 implementations, have a working and interoperable implementation. So C Lightning having one is like a great first step, but we'll also need a second implementation to also adopt the same protocol and be interoperable. So that's what we need to get dual funding done. And then, oh, right, and so if you're interested in reading the spec, it's up on the RFC repo where we have all of our spec proposals. Great, and then the second thing is we need to finalize liquidity advertisement spec. Most of how like the open and accept is kind of like figured out, but I think there's still a little bit of work to do in terms of how the payment gets paid out after time. Great. Okay, great. So that's basically all I had today. I want to finish off by kind of plugging some other C Lightning related projects that I do. As was mentioned at the start, I I do a Twitch channel. Usually it's Tuesday, Thursday at like 11 a.m. Eastern time. It's just me working on Sea Lightning. There's not really an agenda. I just kind of do whatever I was going to do for that day, but stream it. And then I also run a Twitter channel or Twitter account called Sea Lightning Commit with a single M. It only has one M because I ran out of like characters on Twitter names, but yeah, okay, so the Sea Lightning commit is basically if I find a commit that I think is really interesting in Sea Lightning, I'll like tweet it out so you can kind of see cool and interesting stuff that's getting added to Sea Lightning. I'm always looking for, like, so if you find something in the Sea Lightning commit like history that you think is really interesting, I'm totally happy to like retweet other stuff. So yeah. Submissions welcome. Great, that's everything I had for today. I have about like 4 minutes, so if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to take a question or two. Kind of hard to see. Okay. Oh, okay, yes. Oh, sorry.
For the advertisements themselves, is there overlap with, I think Tomas Bloomer had the like DeFi ads proposal on Lightning Devs like a couple months ago?
Oh, I haven't heard about that.
You haven't heard about that? Yeah, I think it was a couple months ago. It was like, it seemed like a similar type of thing from a superficial reading where it was like allowing nodes to advertise some general things that they had available.
Oh, that's interesting. I think this is like probably slightly different in that it's just for like Lightning liquidity capacity, but I'll check that out. Thanks. Yeah.
You talked about the bid side in terms of offering liquidity. What about the ask side? Is that useful information? Like requesting inbound liquidity. So I want to advertise that someone else offer liquidity on the side.
Oh, no, that's not part of the spec currently. It's just send me your offers.
Do you have a way of thinking about why that is not useful information? Because it could motivate the provision of liquidity.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I think like the kind of intuition that I've been working off of, at least how I've been modeling it, and it might be totally wrong, is that the idea is that, okay, I think I have been making a certain assumption that when you no longer have capital, you take your advertisement down. And so, or you start to like, or rates start to go up, if that makes sense. So that at some point, like the indicator in the market would be that it's getting more expensive. So that like the advertised rates get higher. And the reason that would happen is because there's just less people advertising or less availability for it. But I think you're right in that it is a little difficult to maybe figure that out exactly. Right, so like if you're monitoring, so if the idea is if like, since these are like widely gossiped, someone, in theory, you could monitor and like have like an index that's like, oh, this is like the current rate of capital on Lightning given these like liquidity advertisements, you know, and you could like track it. And the idea is that if it went up to like if it was going up, then like maybe more people would see that it was like more expensive and then be motivated to like start committing more capital to the network. Is like the goal. Yeah. Cool. I have time for one more question if there is one. If not, again. Oh, there's one back here. Right. So it would definitely be like a. Oh, I'm sorry. The question was, is it based on honesty, or is there some sort of like UTXO thing that you could do? So basically, it's like an offer, right? And so then when someone sends you like an open channel, they would say like, yes, I would like to take you up on this much for like however much, and then. So basically, when you like do the opening channel negotiation, there's an opportunity for the other side to tell you how much money they're putting into the channel. And if they decided, so if they had advertised whatever and you would ask for this thing and they're like, oh no, I'm only gonna put like not as much as I said into the channel, then the channel's not open yet. No harm, no foul. They didn't commit to what you had asked for. For whatever reason, maybe they don't have enough capital available, like whatever, but there's no, you don't have to commit to the contract until you've like seen exactly what they're putting in, if that makes sense. So, Great. Okay, I am unfortunately out of time, but thank you so much for coming to lightning stuff. And yeah.